something obviously important because you have to teach your users how to do the different transfers when they're not familiar with these phones. Okay, talks about how to do the call park, and so it's different. It varies from one phone model, from one phone vendor to the next, and even sometimes from one phone model to the next within a vendor. All right, that's the as far as the documents, I think those are the main ones that I wanted to show at this point. And now we're going to currently I'm logged into a QX200. All right, you'll see that it is on the latest release 6.2.40. So we want to look at how to configure the phones. The first thing you'll do is go to your extensions. And on your extensions management page, you're going to have a list of all your different extensions, and then you'll specify each extension which IP line that the extension is going to be associated with, which line on the IP line on the system. So it's on this IP line. That's where you're going to configure each individual phone. So keep in mind, you've got your extensions. Your extensions get you can edit the extension and select the IP line that it's associated with, or if it was an analog extension, you could choose the FXS extension. Or in the case of extension 160, this is a virtual extension, which means it does not have a phone instrument assigned to it. All right, let's just do an edit on this extension so you can see the actual settings. One of these extensions here doesn't matter, so extension 101. All right, extension 101, you've got your name. This is the user's password for voicemail. And then you have the attached line, in this case IP line number 2. You've got all your IP lines available that are available on the system. Some are disabled because I don't have an IP license that's going to enable those additional IP lines. All right, so now that you've assigned the IP line, now you need to go and configure the actual phone instrument. Okay, I can use this setting down here at the bottom where it says go to the line settings. That would take me to IP line number 2. Or you can click on interfaces, and then it takes you to the IP line settings. All right, I've got a couple phones already configured here. I've got IP line number 1, IP line number 5, IP line number 8. Okay, I've got I do have a phone here beside me. We're going to configure a couple of these phones and add a couple new ones here. All right, there's 3 ways to first thing you want to do when you're configuring your phones. Let's start with that. Is you go to your IP line settings. There's an option here, a couple options. One is to enable plug and play for the IP phones. So plug and play is where you have a phone in your hand and you just connect it to the system, and the phone is able to recognize, or the system's able to recognize that phone. It recognizes the phone model, the MAC address. It sends out a configuration file to the phone so that it can work properly, and it automatically comes up and it gets assigned to the very first extension that has an IP line assigned to it. Firmware version control. Okay, this is a nice option. This is where the QX will control the firmware version on that phone. So we will automatically upgrade or downgrade that phone to our recommended firmware. All right, we're doing that for the Snum phones, Yealink phones. Might be another model, but that list that I pointed to earlier, it'll specify whether the phone, whether it's supporting the automatic firmware version control or not. Excuse me. Okay, now they get the this option. This setting is probably the more important setting. This is, and you need to configure this first before you connect your phones. This is where you're actually specifying, you're telling the QX where the phones are physically located, whether they're on the LAN or WAN, or whether they're physically, there's going to be, if you created a VLAN, you'll see a third option here called VLAN, and they'll specify which VLAN the phones will be found on. And why is that important? Because when the phones receive a configuration file from the QX, one of the options in the configuration file is going to be the IP address of the PBX. Okay, and it's going to specify either the LAN, WAN, or VLAN based on the setting that it has here. And then there's an option for your template, which we'll look at here momentarily. Okay, so the first option on configuring the phone would be using the plug and play method. Okay, I've got a Snom phone here, and if I disconnect it and then I reconnect it, I powered it back up. Okay, it's just now coming up. I disconnected it, it's getting power. When that phone goes to configure, it should, once the system recognizes it, it should come up and be assigned to IP line 2, which will be extension 101. Okay, why that one in particular? Because it's the very first IP line that's available and also has an extension assigned to it. All right, so it will, that's the one that it'll come up on. All right, I'll refresh that a time or two, and we'll see. Hopefully it'll come up here for us. All right, while that's configuring, oh, there it is already. Okay, good. So it automatically got assigned. I did not have to do that. I did not have to add the MAC address or anything else. That phone automatically got assigned to IP line number 1. Here's the MAC address. It's a Snom. It's a 360. All right. One of the reasons I like to use the Snom 360s, even though they're a little bit older, but they reboot real fast. They come up real quick. All right, and if that phone is working for us, I do get dial tone, and I can dial *74. Oops. Let's see, we want to, let me go off hook, *74.
This phone is connected to IP line number 2. Extension is 101.
All right, so if you dial *74, it tells you which extension it came up as and which IP line it's assigned to. All right, that's the plug and play part of it. All right, the next option would be to would be the auto configuration. Okay, and this is where you specifically choose an IP line. For example, IP line number 7, extension 106, where you go in, you select it, you enable it, and then there's a drop-down list of all your different, all the different phones that we support. It's a very impressive list, very long. A lot of these phones, or even the older phones, we're still going to configure these. We'd never remove the older phones from our list. You know, like a lot of the old, like Polycom IP 300, you know, this phone, they don't use those anymore. But we'll still configure those. All right, let's choose a phone I have here. This is a Yeelink 49. Let's see, which one was it? I think it was the T49G. Okay, and then so I choose the phone model, and I've already got the MAC address, so I can copy and paste it. The line appearance, this is important. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. The line appearance is going to specify how many simultaneous calls that phone can make. Okay, you can increase it. Let's say if I chose 8, it might not allow it on that particular phone model. Depending on the phone model or phone, they have limitations on how many simultaneous calls that phone model can make. All right, so 5 basically means that it has 5 line appearances. That means it can receive up to 5 phone calls. The username, this is LOC for local ext extension 106. We give it a default username, and then we're going to give it a good strong password. Okay, and then the other options, just leave it as UDP, use the default template. All right, that's all going to be fine. All right, so at this point, that phone, it should configure. Now I boot that phone up and power it up, and it should configure to the system. All right. I know that phone takes a little bit longer to boot up. You'll see an option here for the password. This is a good strong password. It's very important that you use our password. That you don't need to know what this password is. You just need to know that there is a good strong password there. If you want to use a different one, you can click on this little key. All right, and then oh, I just lost it. Let me do that again. So if I click on the key, and it gives you a list of passwords to choose. Okay, you can just click on any one of these, and that would be the password that would be selected. You can see that these are good, strong, random, you know, characters, numbers, letters. All right, so you can just choose on any one of those, and it would select it for you. But there's already a password in there, so we're not going to interfere with it. And the phone will be booting up. It'll come up here momentarily. All right, once you, that's the second method. Third method would be to manually configure the phones, okay? So let's say you have a type of phone that's not supported, it's not on our drop-down list. All right, and it will still work with the system. You know, maybe it's a door station or a soft phone. Okay, it will still work with our system, but we don't have a configuration file for that phone that we're going to use. So you can see down here, down towards the bottom, you see I've got some extensions that are, you just click on the IP line, and for your phone model type, you go through your list of all your different phone models, and then, you know, you don't see it listed. Okay, so you just select other, and the opportunity to enter the MAC address, you can't do that anymore. That's been removed. It's all grayed out. And then you specify the line appearance. That's how many simultaneous calls. Then you got a username, local extension 108. And then you will need to know what that password is. Instead of letting the system just randomly choosing a password for you, um, you need to know what that password might be. Okay, so you need to, obviously you can write this down, but it's easier if you're careful. You can highlight it, right click on it, and copy it. Okay, now that you've copied it, now you can choose it by selecting on it. Okay, now that's the password that's in there. And then you can save your settings. And now you're going to need to log into that particular device so that you can manually configure that device. Okay, all right. So let's say the phone that I was using, if it was this particular phone device, this is actually one of our supported phones, but if it, let's say for instance, if it was not, which is the case periodically, maybe there's a new phone that came out, it's not on our supported phone list yet. Well, not all is lost because you can still use it. It just means the system's not going to auto configure it for you. Okay, you can go in and then in your account settings on the device, there'll be a place where you can specify the SIP server. That's going to be there's only like 4 settings that you need. And this will be for the same across the board, any SIP device, whether this was a camera, a soft phone, one of the phones that we don't support, a door station. You're going to enter the IP address for the PBX. The PBX's SIP port, by default, it will be 5060. You can change that. And then up here, the registration name. This is the case local extension 101. If this was the, I think we were using local extension 102. This use the same for the username. And then here's the password that we had previously copied, and we can enter there. Okay, so at that point, this device would, actually this is on my LAN. If I change this, it, I don't know if I had the right username, but let's see. But that's all you need to do to have that. Actually, it was local extension 108, I think was what I was using. Let's just see if we can get it to register. All right, local extension 108. Local extension 108. Operation complete and success. The device registered. If we look at status, it shows that account number 1 is registered. If we go back and look at the PBX, we would see this device as being registered. Excuse me. So it's registered as local extension 108. If you want to see which devices are registered, go to status, system status, and IP lines registration status. Okay, you can see all the different devices that are currently registered. Okay, and you can see the last one that we registered was with this local extension 108. So it is registered. Okay. All right, you can see each one of those.